In the silent mansion, the millionaire walked the halls with firm steps, but his heart was filled with a restlessness he couldn't explain. 8 months ago, his maid, that discreet and faithful woman, had simply resigned without offering a single explanation. Accustomed to quick answers and absolute control over everything, he had never faced such a disturbing mystery within his own home. At first, he suspected betrayal, theft, even a hidden secret that could tarnish his reputation. But as the months passed, her absence began to transform into a void that no replacement could fill. Who, after all, was this woman who had served the family in silence for years, never revealing anything about her personal life? 8 months of silence, 8 months of unanswered questions. Until one cold dawn, the mansion's phone rang. The voice on the other end, charged with urgency and mystery, brought news that would make the millionaire's breath catch. It was the hospital, and hidden within that call was a truth capable of turning his world upside down, revealing that the woman he thought was merely a maid was harboring a secret that would change everything forever. Before we dive into this surprising plot, tell me from which city you are watching us, leave a comment and I will respond with gratitude. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and like this video. This will help the story reach more people and ensure you don't miss any of the exciting lessons we have to share. The millionaire had always been accustomed to absolute power. His routine was marked by lavish meetings, million-dollar decisions, and a life surrounded by people who insisted on obeying every order without question. However, as much as his wealth and influence gave him a sense of control over everything, there was one detail he never imagined would make him uneasy: the sudden absence of his maid. She was a discreet woman of few words, who had worked for years in his mansion without ever causing problems. She wasn't part of the family, but somehow her presence was so constant that she had become almost invisible, like the air one breathes without realizing it. Until one ordinary morning, she appeared before him with her eyes downcast, her voice trembling, and an unexpected request. She wanted 8 months' leave. She didn't explain the reason, didn't bring a medical certificate, didn't make excuses. She simply asked, with a firmness that surprised even the boss, accustomed to refusing requests without a care. At first, he reacted coldly. How could someone who always demanded direct answers and quick solutions accept such a strange request? 8 months was too long. Why not a week or a month, like any ordinary employee would? The millionaire questioned, pressed, and tried to extract at least a plausible justification from her, but to no avail. The employee simply repeated the request, her expression filled with pain and determination. There was no arrogance in her gaze, only a shadow of sadness and a silence that spoke louder than any words. Uncomfortable with what had happened, he decided to give in, but not out of compassion. The millionaire was too proud to admit that he had felt differently upon seeing that scene. He agreed because he believed that sooner or later he would discover the truth through other means. After all, no one could keep secrets from him for long. He was convinced there was something wrong, perhaps a financial problem, perhaps a hidden romance, or even an intention to work elsewhere. His mind, accustomed to the game of business, sought logical, calculating explanations, as if people's lives were always a contract that could be interpreted in clear clauses. In the first few days after her departure, the mansion followed the same routine. Another maid was hired to take her place, and he believed everything would return to normal. But she never returned. It was as if the house had lost something that could not be replaced. Every corner seemed emptier. Every detail felt incomplete. The new maid did everything correctly, but there was none of the same silent dedication, the same almost invisible care that the previous one had left in every gesture. The millionaire, without admitting it to anyone, began to miss that discreet presence. As the weeks passed, her absence became a nuisance. He sent security guards to investigate, asked for her contact information, tried calling. No answer. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. Messages went unanswered. It was as if she had disappeared from view. This lack of response began to gnaw at something inside him he wasn't used to feeling. Restlessness. The man who always said he didn't need anyone, who prided himself on his independence and coolness, now found himself thinking about the maid during important meetings, wondering where she was, who she was with, what she was hiding. By the end of the second month, irritation began to mix with worry. It wasn't just the lack of answers, but the feeling that something serious was happening. He remembered her expression on the day she requested leave. There was pain there. There was fear. It wasn't the attitude of someone who simply wanted a vacation or freedom. It was as if she were carrying a burden too heavy to share with anyone. The millionaire began to realize that perhaps he had ignored signs that had always been right in front of him. How many times had she arrived tired but never complained? How many times had she seemed sad but kept quiet? He never asked, never wanted to know. For him, employees existed to work, not to share personal stories. The following months were a silent torment. With each replacement who passed through the mansion, he involuntarily compared the dedication and silence of the former maid. He felt angry at himself for caring, but he couldn't help it. Her absence had become an enigma, a void that neither fortune nor cars nor luxurious dinners could fill. Friends and associates noticed his distraction, but he never admitted the reason. How could he reveal that he was disturbed by the disappearance of a simple maid? For a man like him, that would be a sign of weakness. Time seemed to drag on. In the 7th month, when he was about to believe he would never have answers, he began having strange dreams. He dreamed of the empty mansion, of dark corridors, and of her voice calling for help. He woke in a cold sweat, unable to understand why such a seemingly insignificant figure haunted him so. It was at that moment that he realized the mystery of her absence had become an open wound in his life. It wasn't just curiosity, it was something bigger. Then, one cold dawn, the mansion's phone rang. The sound cut through the silence like an unexpected scream. He answered irritably, but soon realized it was no ordinary call. On the other end, a serious, urgent voice identified itself as the city hospital. The millionaire felt his heart race. Finally, after 8 months of absolute silence, something was emerging, but along with the anticipation came fear. What news could be behind that call? And most importantly, what had his maid been hiding all this time? The millionaire remained motionless. The phone pressed to his ear as the voice on the other end brought him information that seemed lost amid the noise of his own racing heart. The hospital. It was indeed the hospital. But why would they call him? There was no family relationship between them, no connection to justify it. The nurse insisted they needed him to go there, as his name had been listed as the emergency contact. For a moment, he was angered. How dare that woman, that simple employee, use his name on an official document as if it were someone close? But soon, that anger dissolved into something even more disturbing. Why hadn't she trusted any of her own family, any of her friends, and chosen him? The question echoed in his mind like an unbearable weight. Still stunned, he tossed the phone on the table and paced his living room. The mansion, silent as ever, seemed to watch him. Expensive paintings, luxurious furniture, imported rugs, everything so impeccable, but now irrelevant in the face of the possibility that his maid was in danger. The millionaire had never admitted to needing anyone, but suddenly he felt called to face something he wasn't sure he was ready for. He took a deep breath, grabbed the keys to his sports car, and hurried out, driving through the early morning with headlights cutting through the darkness. The road seemed endless. Every kilometer he traveled increased the unanswered questions. What had happened? Was she injured, sick, at risk of death? And why had she never asked for his help before, simply disappearing without explanation? He remembered every detail of the last few days he had seen her low voice, her distant gaze, the weight of something she carried silently. He had ignored it, thinking only of his own wounded curiosity. Now, however, he felt as if he had wasted too much time, and perhaps it was too late to redeem himself. Arriving at the hospital, he was led through white corridors lit by cold lamps. The smell of disinfectant and the distant sound of machines monitoring patients made him shiver. For a man accustomed to luxurious surroundings, this place seemed like another world. The nurse explained, in a respectful but urgent tone, that the maid had been admitted months ago in secret, asking that nothing be revealed. The millionaire almost couldn't believe it. What? In secret? How could someone carry such a serious illness, or perhaps such a painful struggle, without ever asking for help? He was led to a closed door. Before entering, he took a deep breath, trying to prepare himself for what he would find. He pushed slowly, and as he saw the scene before him, he felt the impact of an invisible blow. There she was, lying on a simple bed, so fragile and unlike the discreet figure he knew. Her face pale, her eyes half closed, her breathing marked by exhaustion. For a moment he couldn't move. This wasn't just his maid. She was a human being who had waged a silent battle hidden from view, never asking for anything more than dignity. He approached, pulled out a chair, and sat beside her. He tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't come out. The millionaire, accustomed to commanding speeches, firm words that defined the course of companies and people, now found himself speechless before the fragility of someone who had always been there, invisible to his eyes. Finally, he murmured her name, and slowly her eyes opened. For a moment, a small smile appeared on her lips, a mixture of surprise and relief. She hadn't expected him to answer the call. The nurse returned and handed the millionaire some documents. He opened them with trembling hands and discovered medical records, tests, reports, interrupted treatments. The truth was beginning to emerge. She had requested those 8 months, not on a whim, but because she was facing a serious illness, the kind that corrodes not only the body, but also hope. The millionaire felt the weight of guilt. All this time, he had imagined selfish stories, suspected lies, and judged without knowing. Now he realized he had failed to see the real pain of someone who had served his home loyally. The following hours were filled with silence and reflection. He remained there, watching her sleep, remembering small gestures that had previously gone unnoticed. The fresh flowers he always found on the table, the care taken with every detail of the mansion, the way she always seemed to disappear so as not to disturb him. All of this now took on new meaning. She had dedicated herself so much to her work that she had never revealed her own struggle. To him, this was incomprehensible. Why would anyone hide such great pain? But at the same time, he sensed a strength in her he hadn't known, a quiet courage not found in powerful men like him. At dawn, as the first light streamed through the bedroom window, the millionaire made a decision he never imagined he would make. He wouldn't let her face this alone. For the first time in years, this wasn't about business, contracts, or profit. This was about humanity, about being there for someone who, though invisible to the world, had become essential. He stood up, spoke to the doctors, and demanded the best treatment available, without measuring the cost. For the first time, his money wouldn't be used for show, but to save a life. And as he walked through the hospital corridors, he felt a strange weight on his chest. It was as if he were facing an inevitable transformation. The proud, cold, and calculating millionaire was giving way to someone who was beginning to understand the true value of people. There was still much to discover, many secrets she might still be keeping. But one thing was certain, that phone call had changed everything. The 8-month silence was finally beginning to unravel, and the journey that lay ahead would be more painful and emotional than he could ever have imagined. The millionaire left the hospital room with heavy steps, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. For the first time in a long time, he didn't know what to do. He was used to giving orders, deciding the future of companies, moving unimaginable figures. But now, faced with his maid's fragility, he felt powerless. As he walked down the hallway lit by cold lamps, memories he'd never valued began to flood his mind. He remembered how she arrived early every morning, took care of the details of the mansion without complaint, and disappeared silently so as not to disturb him. She'd never asked for a raise, never demanded anything beyond the basics. And yet, when he needed help, he chose to remain silent. Why? What could have driven her to hide something so painful? Determined not to rest until he found answers, he sought out the medical team. He wanted details, diagnoses, any information that could explain those 8 months of silence. The doctors, however, remained reserved. They explained only that she had fought a battle with a serious illness and that the treatment process had been long, painful, and risky. With each word, the millionaire felt a lump tighten in his throat. He, who had always prided himself on controlling everything with money, realized he couldn't buy back lost time. He returned to the mansion that morning with a weight that seemed to crush him. The vast halls were even emptier, colder, and quieter. He walked to the library, sat in his leather chair, and let his head fall back. For the first time in years, tears threatened to fall from his eyes. The image of her, so fragile in bed, wouldn't leave his mind. Why had he never asked? Why had he always treated her life as invisible? With each memory, a pang of regret arose. In the following days, he began visiting the hospital frequently. He arrived in an impeccable suit, but his arrogant demeanor seemed to disappear as he approached her room. He would sit for hours, often in silence, simply observing. On one of these visits, he found her awake, more conscious. Her voice was weak, but it carried a firmness that surprised him. "I didn't want to disturb anyone," she said, staring at the ceiling. He tried to respond, but found no words. He simply held her hand, a gesture he never thought he would make. Little by little, brief conversations began to emerge. Fragments of her life began to reveal themselves, like pieces of a puzzle. He discovered that she had put aside her own youth to care for sick family members, that she had endured hardships without ever asking for help. He also discovered that she had no one close to her whom she could trust. So when she needed to recommend a contact at the hospital, she had given his name, not because she considered him a kind boss, but because it was the only name she was sure someone would answer. This revelation hit the millionaire hard. He, who had always considered himself distant and indifferent, was, paradoxically, the only reliable presence in her life. This discovery gnawed at him and transformed him. In meetings, he could no longer concentrate. All he could think about was returning to the hospital, finding out if she had eaten, if the treatment was working. Partners began to question his absence, to notice his change in behavior, but he didn't care. For the first time, his fortune, his business, everything seemed small compared to the possibility of losing someone he had never valued. One night he returned to the hospital and found her in tears. She tried to hide it, but her tears fell silently. He approached, touched her shoulder, and asked what was wrong. After a long silence, she revealed that she feared she wouldn't survive the treatment. She said her greatest pain wasn't the disease itself, but the thought of leaving nothing but the silence that had always accompanied her. "No one will remember me," she murmured. The millionaire felt his heart break. He had never thought of legacy in such a human way. For him, legacy was a company, assets, a name in headlines. But here was a woman who believed she wouldn't leave a mark on the world. Moved by something he'd never felt before, he promised that wouldn't happen. He said that whatever happened, he would make a point of honoring his story. The maid smiled, still in tears, as if that were the first true promise anyone had ever made to her. It was at that moment that the millionaire realized he was no longer the same man he'd been before. There was something changing inside him, something no amount of money could buy. The days went on, and with them, new challenges. The treatment intensified, bringing pain and uncertainty. The millionaire, however, remained by her side, willing to face each stage. He was no longer just a curious boss faced with a mystery. He was someone who allowed himself to feel, suffer, and fight for another person. And this change began to be reflected in his own life. Friends noticed his absence at parties. Business associates wondered at his dedication outside of work. Newspapers speculated about his seclusion. He, however, didn't care. For the first time, he was discovering the true meaning of humanity. And amidst all this, an even bigger question loomed within him. What would he do if she didn't make it? How would he cope with the loss of someone he, ironically, only began to realize when he was on the verge of losing her? This doubt followed him like a shadow, reminding him that time was a relentless enemy. But it also drove him to action. It wasn't enough to simply be by her side. He needed to do more. He needed to change not only her life, but his own. So at the end of that third month of visits, the millionaire made a decision. He wouldn't let her silence be forgotten. If she didn't have the strength to tell her story, he would tell it for her. If she didn't have a voice to share her struggle, he would give her one. For the first time in his life, the millionaire found a purpose that wasn't tied to power, money, or recognition. It was tied to something much simpler and more profound. The dignity of an invisible life that had now become essential. The millionaire began to realize that life around him was changing in ways he never imagined. Before, each day was predictable. Meetings, financial decisions, business dinners, and lavish parties at his mansion. Now his routine revolved around the hospital, that cold, white-lit place, which had initially caused him discomfort, had become a kind of second home. The disinfectant-smelling corridors no longer bothered him. On the contrary, each step he took there brought him a sense of purpose. He, who had previously seen people as numbers, contracts, and tools to expand his business, began to see them differently. But there was still something he didn't understand. Why had his maid hidden so much? Why hadn't she trusted him or anyone else to share her pain? This question gnawed at him day and night. It was in this state of unease that he decided to investigate further. He discreetly sent one of his trusted men to seek information. He discovered that during those 8 months, she had not only been battling the disease, but also making frequent visits to an orphanage on the outskirts of the city. The millionaire was intrigued. What connection could there be between his maid and that place? The next day, he took advantage of a break between doctor's visits and headed to the orphanage. Upon arrival, he was greeted by nuns and volunteers who, upon hearing his name, were surprised. "Ah, so it's you." She talked a lot about the boss, one of the nuns said with a melancholy smile. He frowned, trying to understand. The nun led him to a small room where several children were playing with simple toys, some patched together. Their joy contrasted with the poverty of the place. It was then that the nun showed him a photo, her maid holding a small child in her arms, with a smile he had never seen on her face inside the mansion. Stunned, he asked who the child was. The answer left him speechless. "He's her son," the nun said. "She left him here when he was still a baby because she couldn't raise him alone. But she never stopped coming. Even during treatment, she made a point of visiting, bringing him clothes, toys, and telling him stories." And the millionaire's heart raced. A son. She had never mentioned anything. How could she have hidden such a big secret for all those years? Back at the hospital, he looked at her with a mixture of anger, confusion, and compassion. When he entered the room, she noticed his heavy gaze, and before he could even say anything, she began to cry. With a weak voice, she confessed that hiding her son had been the hardest decision of her life. She explained that with no family to support her and needing to work, she believed the orphanage would be the only place capable of ensuring the boy's survival. "I didn't want you to know. I was afraid of losing my job, afraid of being judged. And more than that, I wanted to protect my son from the shame of having a mother who couldn't give him anything." The millionaire fell silent. His hands trembled, and for the first time, he didn't know whether to feel pain for her or for himself. It hurt to realize that for all those years, he'd never been curious about who she really was. To him, she'd always been just the maid. But now he discovered there was a whole woman behind the uniform, a mother, a fighter, someone who had sacrificed everything in silence. In the following days, he began to reflect on the weight of this secret. Suddenly, her absence from the mansion made even more sense. The 8 months were spent not only fighting the disease, but also trying to prepare his son for the future if she didn't survive. This revelation deeply affected the millionaire. He remembered his own childhood, marked by the coldness of an absent father and the distance of a mother who had always prioritized social appearances. Perhaps that was why he had become such a hard man, incapable of connecting with the pain of others. But now, faced with this woman, he felt compelled to break that cycle. He determined to meet the boy. He returned to the orphanage, this time not as a curious visitor, but as someone willing to get involved. He sat with the children, watched them play, and finally found the boy the nun had shown him. The boy had lively, curious eyes, an innocent smile, and an energy that contrasted with his mother's fragility in the hospital. Seeing him, the millionaire felt a strange pang in his chest, as if a part of himself were being rescued in that moment. Back at the hospital, he told the maid that he had met her son. She despaired, apologizing, afraid she had lost what little dignity she had left. But to her surprise, he simply held her hand and said he didn't judge her. On the contrary, he admired her courage. And in that moment, he made a promise that would change not only her life, but his as well. He wouldn't let that boy grow up alone. This decision began to transform every aspect of his life. The millionaire became involved in the orphanage, donating resources to improve its facilities and ensure education and care for all the children. This gesture, however, wasn't driven by cold charity, but by a new understanding of life. He realized every day that true wealth wasn't found in overflowing coffers or luxury cars, but in the impact it could have on people's hearts. Meanwhile, his maid, even weakened by treatment, found strength in knowing her son was supported. For the first time in years, she could rest without the crushing weight of constant worry. And the millionaire, seeing her smile again, discovered a peace he had never felt before. However, the conflict within him was still unresolved. His son's revelation had brought to the surface a series of questions about his own life. How many people around him lived invisible, hiding pain he'd never bothered to see? How many times had he used his wealth as a shield to avoid facing the reality of human fragility? Now, before her and his son, the millionaire knew he could never be the same again. The fourth block of this story concluded with a clear transformation. The cold and calculating man began to open his heart to feelings he'd never known. Life, previously controlled by numbers and contracts, was now guided by promises and emotions. And although the future still held uncertainty regarding her health, one thing was already certain: they would never be alone again. The following weeks were marked by a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The millionaire, now increasingly present at the hospital and the orphanage, felt his life heading in a completely different direction than the one he had always known. He, who had once believed that happiness lay in achievements and wealth, was beginning to understand that there was much greater value in simple gestures, like holding his maid's hand during treatment or bringing smiles to her son's face during visits to the orphanage. But the closer he got to this new reality, the more he feared losing everything. The doctor's prognosis was guarded, and the illness she faced could still take her at any moment. This shadow loomed over every moment, reminding him that life is fragile and time is cruel. One night, upon leaving the hospital, the millionaire was surprised by an urgent meeting called by his partners. They were upset by his absence, claiming that business was suffering due to his lack of attention. "You're distracting yourself, ruining everything," one of them accused. For once he didn't react arrogantly. He remained silent, reflecting. Yes, perhaps he was losing contracts, perhaps he was letting opportunities slip away. But within him, a conviction grew. None of this was worth more than the life at stake. He decided that, if necessary, he would give it all up. At the hospital, the maid noticed this transformation. Between treatment sessions, she looked at him in surprise. "You don't have to sacrifice yourself for me," she said one afternoon, her voice weakening. "I've already done enough. My son will be fine now, and that's enough for me." But the millionaire squeezed her hand firmly and replied, "It's not a sacrifice, it's a choice. For the first time, I feel like I'm choosing something that truly matters." She wept, overcome with emotion, and in that instant, she realized she had achieved something she never dreamed of. Not only the care of her boss, but the change of heart that had previously seemed unattainable. Meanwhile, his relationship with the boy intensified. The millionaire began taking him on discreet outings, introducing him to places he never imagined he'd visit. The boy, with his innocence and energy, brought the millionaire a sense of fatherhood he'd never experienced. He remembered his own cold and unloving childhood, and now he felt he could break that cycle by offering the boy what he'd never received. Gradually, he realized he wasn't just helping out of obligation or promise, but because he truly wanted to be there. This connection began to spark talk. Society, always attentive to the millionaire's life, speculated about his connection with the maid and the boy. Newspapers published headlines hinting at scandals, and his business rivals seized the opportunity to question his credibility. In the past, such news would have made him explode with rage and file million-dollar lawsuits. Now, however, everything seemed trivial compared to the reality he was living in. What did headlines matter when he had the chance to transform lives? Despite his resistance, an internal conflict grew. The millionaire still wondered if he had the strength to bear her loss. Every night before bed, he feared the phone would ring again, bringing the worst news. This fear consumed him, but it also drove him to act with greater intensity. He began funding medical research, bringing in specialists from abroad, and investing in innovative treatments. He didn't care about the cost. What he wanted was a chance, however small, to see her recover. One of those days, when he entered her room, he found her more fragile than ever. Her eyes, however, shone differently. "You've changed," she said with a slight smile. "I see it in every gesture you make. I don't know if I can resist, but knowing I won't leave forgotten is enough." The millionaire gently cupped her face, feeling the tears well up. "You're not leaving. I won't let you," he replied, his tone almost desperate. It was the first time he had allowed himself to show such vulnerability. That moment marked the climax of his transformation. The man who had previously lived surrounded by walls of pride now completely disarmed himself before the woman he had barely noticed until recently. The maid, serving him in silence, proved to be the key to revealing his humanity. The millionaire realized that life had given him a second chance to be a better person, and he wasn't about to waste it. He then determined to prepare a future for the boy. He had lawyers draw up documents to ensure that whatever happened, the boy would have everything he needed: a home, an education, and protection. But more than that, he decided he would have presence, affection, and a father figure he never imagined he would have. Every time he saw the boy's smile, he felt that even if he lost all his possessions, he would have found the greatest of riches. As the disease progressed, the millionaire came to understand that he might not be able to control the outcome of her life, but he could control his own response to this pain. He chose to love, he chose to be present, he chose to transform himself. And in the midst of this entire process, he discovered that it wasn't just her who needed saving. He himself was being saved from that invisible prison of coldness and loneliness he had carried throughout his life. The fifth section ended with the millionaire looking out the hospital window, the boy playing in the hallway, and the maid resting in her room. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about numbers or contracts. He was thinking about time. The value of every second, every gesture, every word. He knew the future was uncertain, but he was certain that whatever happened, he was no longer the same man. And that, thanks to that woman invisible to the eyes of the world, he had discovered the true meaning of existence. The early morning silence filled the hospital. The corridors, once bustling with hurried doctors and nurses, now seemed deserted, lit only by the cold glow of lamps. The millionaire remained seated beside the maid's bed, gazing at her with an intensity he had never shown anyone before. His tired eyes betrayed sleepless nights, but he refused to leave. He felt every second with her was too precious to waste. The boy, exhausted after playing and laughing throughout the day, had fallen asleep on a nearby sofa, protected by the shadow of the man who was now beginning to assume the role of father. The doctor entered silently, examined the patient, and gave the millionaire a serious look. Words were not needed to understand. The situation was critical. He nodded, thanked her, and remained firm. As he held her fragile hand, he realized how thin and cold it was, as if the life was slowly draining away. A wave of despair hit him, but at the same time, a conviction took hold of him. He would not let her leave feeling invisible. He would not allow her story to end in silence, as she herself feared. In the following days, the millionaire mobilized everything he had. He called in renowned specialists, brought in modern equipment, and paid for alternative treatments. He used his fortune as a shield against the inevitable. But even with so many resources, he knew there was something beyond science at stake. Her life was in the hands of something greater, something he had never believed in: faith. Yet now, sitting night after night beside her, he began to wonder if there wasn't in fact a purpose behind it all. One of those early mornings, when the machines beeped at regular intervals and the silence seemed overwhelming, he heard her whisper his name. He approached, bent down to listen. "Promise to take care of him," she murmured, referring to her son. The millionaire felt his heart ache. "I promise. Not only will I take care of him, I will love him like my own son," she replied, tears streaming down her face. For the first time she truly smiled, a weak smile but filled with peace. And in that moment, he realized that it no longer mattered what the future held. The transformation was already complete. News of her plight spread among hospital staff and even in the press. Soon, people began to talk about the millionaire who spent sleepless nights beside a sick employee. Many were surprised, others suspicious, but no one could deny the sincerity in every gesture. The cold man, once remembered for ruthless negotiations, was now seen as someone capable of dedicating his life to a simple person. This change began to inspire others. Doctors who gave more effort, volunteers who visited the hospital, even rival businessmen who began contributing to the orphanage. Her life, so hidden and silent, now generated echoes of transformation. The months dragged by with improvements and relapses. There were days when she seemed to be recovering, talking, smiling with her son. Others when the disease overwhelmed her and she could barely open her eyes. The millionaire, however, remained steadfast. She learned to tell stories to the boy, to laugh at the little things, to find hope even in the midst of pain. She realized that life, with all its fragility, could be beautiful precisely because it was brief. One day, the boy asked, "If my mother goes to heaven, will you still be with me?" The millionaire felt a lump in his throat. He knelt before him and firmly replied, "I will never leave you. You are my son now and always will be." These words, spoken for the first time in his life, sealed the transformation he had resisted so long. The man who had previously seen people as disposable parts now saw himself as a father, as a guardian, as someone capable of true love. The next morning, upon entering his room, the millionaire found his maid more serene than ever. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating her tired but peaceful face. She looked at him and her son, and in a barely audible voice said, "Thank you. You've given me more than I ever dreamed." Then she closed her eyes and fell asleep. There was silence, then the sound of the monitors changing rhythm. The millionaire held her hand until the very last, allowing himself to cry as never before. The funeral was simple, as she would certainly have wished, but surprisingly, dozens of people showed up. Children from the orphanage, volunteers, nurses, even neighbors who remembered her kindness. The millionaire held her son's hand throughout the ceremony, feeling that, although the pain was immense, there was also a strange peace. The invisible woman who had always lived unnoticed now left a legacy no one would forget. In the following months, the millionaire fulfilled his promise. He legally adopted the boy, transformed the orphanage into a modern, well-structured institution, and dedicated part of his fortune to social projects. But more than money, he offered his presence. He was there for every birthday, for every school assignment, through every night of fear and insecurity. The boy grew up knowing he had a real father by his side, not just a rich man, but someone who chose to love him. Over time, the millionaire became a beacon of humanity. The press, which had previously seen him as arrogant and insensitive, now portrayed his story as one of the most inspiring. But he cared little for fame. What mattered was looking at her son and remembering the promise made in the silent early morning hours of the hospital. A promise that not only saved the boy's life, but also rescued the soul of a man who, until then, had been unaware of the true meaning of love. And so the story ended not with defeat, but with a silent and eternal victory. Because, although the maid was no longer physically present, her strength, courage, and sacrifice would live on in every gesture of the transformed millionaire and in the smile of his son, who would never again be alone.